Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and today I am talking about why it's easy to blame the writers for everything being bad in Hollywood. And so this is a part 4, I think, of a series that I've been doing, and I have talked previously about the author and fan disconnect, what the CEOs and other decision makers are doing, and I believe the part 3 was, oh yes, the part 3 was the meeting fan expectations myth part, and today we are going to talk about it's just bad writing. Now, before in the CEO thing and part of the you have to meet the core audience expectation things, I have pointed out that CEOs are telling writers, showrunners that, don't read X of source material or to simplify source material. So, really, when you put constraints like that on the writers, and then, mini rooms and not having a lot of time and really short short seasons, and so you're not there you don't have your resources, you're not there at the set and stuff like that. It's putting a massive strain on the writers, and it's the CEOs making these decisions. The CEOs could change making their decisions at any time and, change the way of doing business, but, they're trying to save money while making $50 million a year. Sure, okay, that's really saving money. So we get to the last argument that I've been seeing, running around. I've been keeping an eye on all the different, I've been watching these I've been looking at these videos and reading comments, and I've been going to Tumblr and reading posts there, and, a lot of times what shows up in the latest doesn't show up in tops, so a lot of it doesn't get a lot of traction, thank God. But there's like 97% of the 93% of the people support the actors and the writers, and like 7% don't. So, and when you look at their usernames and stuff, you understand why. But the biggest argument, or at least the last argument that I've seen, is the writing is just bad. So we shouldn't pay people because the writing is just bad. Okay. Despite the fact that the CEOs are making all these decisions and putting all these constraints on them. The writing is bad. Now, first off, it's really hard to address this type of point because saying the writing is bad is so subjective. Okay, that is an extremely subjective statement. It's really hard to nail down, what is bad versus what is technically bad. Now, for me, when I'm watching a show or a movie and I'm saying the writing is quote-unquote bad, it's because they're telling me what I see on the screen. Let's say Lost in Space, 1997. They were telling me what was going on the screen, and then they would be doing like these little calls to action, and then they would like spend 5 minutes before they started doing the next action. You're like, would you just get on with it? So to me, that's like bad writing. And then I understand when they did an adaptation for Lost in Space for a new TV show, they were making, competent characters do stupid things, holding the idiot ball for plot devices. To me, that's bad writing. But that's not the arguments. That's not the type of arguments that I'm seeing come up as I'm looking through these comments, and I make these type of, I make the type of arguments of, if a character is boring, it's bad writing. I don't like boring characters. But at the same time, I will go read I'll watch like a television adaptation of a book that I think has a boring character in it, and people actually like it or something, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad somebody likes it, but I really thought she needed something to make her a little more interesting. You can be a librarian and let's spend some more time getting to the plot of the book. Let's have this stuff, there has to be a plot to point to these scenes, please. I'm getting bored. You are boring. It is very hard to make a character interesting if they're by themselves all the time, and they're not interacting, and they have these very solo hobbies, Boring. Come on. Spice up her life a little. Give her some friends. But that's not the type of arguments I'm seeing. So this might take, I don't know, maybe we'll get through this in 20 minutes. From here on out, my notes are more like a script than they are actual notes, unlike the previous 3 points, which were more like notes. Or it might take 2 videos and we'll just go over 1 or 2 arguments each video. I'm not sure how many arguments I've got. But the writing is just bad is very subjective, okay? So what you might consider bad writing, other people might enjoy. So there's a difference between, what is technically bad, technical badness, and what is, subjective. I don't like it, so I think it's bad. Okay? So the really first thing I see a lot running around, especially when it comes to animated movies anymore, is that they think is quote-unquote bad writing is they say, we want real villains. This is, like I said, usually thrown at like Disney movies or kid movies. There are people who want villains like Ursula again. And okay, I'm going to interject my opinion here. My opinion is Ursula might have been an antagonist, but she was not the villain. That would be Triton. Triton was the one saying no and destroying things. Not Ursula. Yes, she was an antagonist. She was not a good person. She was, a conflict to remaining human, but she was not the one telling Ariel to begin with that she could not become human at all and destroying all her beautiful human things that she collected, and screaming and yelling. That was Triton. They say they want, villains like Scar or Jafar. Villains who are villains for the sake of being villainy. They want clear-cut villains like the pre-Lilo and Stitch era of Disney movies. And it's understandable. Many Disney and Pixar adjacent movies right now are dealing with generational family trauma. Encanto made me bawl like a baby. Yes, parts of Turning Red were cringe, but oh my god, this part still what made me cry. Strange World, that was... Wow, I was just like, man, I can kind of relate to this father-son thing that's going on. I can relate to that. I needed a little editing, but I can relate. Or, so many pre-2000 Disney movies were like either Shakespearean in nature, like Lion King being Hamlet, or made during literally this Cold War or 1980s Republican-driven black and white versus mentality. And the world, and the writers now coming up in the world, the millennials, the Gen Zs, some of the Gen Xers, we are a product of a globalized society via the internet, and our great-grandparents or grandparents served in the world wars. It was my grandparents, it would have been a grandparent for me. I don't think he did serve, I don't know why he didn't serve. I think he was doing something else. Our parents or grandparents might have served in Korea or Vietnam. I had a grandparent that was of the age to serve in Korea. Our aunts and uncles and elder siblings could have been in Iraq. Our peers could have been in Afghanistan. 9/11 happened at a very formative time for us. I was just going to college. Gen Z has been seeing these like traumatic images of 9/11 since childhood. Their elder siblings were in Afghanistan or Iraq. They talk about the world has constantly been at war for, the older people say, oh, the world has always constantly been at war. wars lasted 5 to 10 years for those generations. Korea, Vietnam, you know, we were in Afghanistan for 2 decades. It's just, it just makes me, it's like, now we have Ukraine and Russia going on, and it's just like, gee, I wonder why we're focused on generational trauma and, fighting with our parents, dealing with cultures not our own and what this means. So these new Disney Pixar movies, while not having the black and white antagonists of the villains of pre-2000s, when it's pre-Lilo and Stitch, which I love Lilo and Stitch, they are having these antagonists that resonate with the children of today. This black and white world that, the boomers had, that the elder Gen X have, the forgotten, the silent generation kind of thing, it's gone. It's gone. Social media has just obliterated it. It was 1997 and I was watching Japanese cartoons on television, and it has only gotten more and more prevalent from there. I can go to Netflix and watch stuff from Germany. I can watch Korean and Chinese dramas on YouTube. Stuff like that. So that whole thing of wanting black and white villains, writers today, they're not necessarily resonating. That's not the stories they want to tell about black and white villains. That's not the stories that that they think kids are going to want to see, that they want to tell their kids. They're not, there's, the lessons of love and forgiveness that they want to show the children or their children. They're not, villains for the sake of being villains. A lot of Ursula's motivation has been retconned in with, cartoons and stuff like that. But it's not the way we tell stories in the 2020s. Or the late 20-aughts, 2010s. Okay, that's not how we are telling stories anymore, because that's not how we view the world anymore. Okay. And then the next argument I see a lot, remember, I'm talking a lot about our IP work and franchise work and adaptation work and these things. They ruined the franchise with the new installment or the new adaptation or something. Okay. No, they haven't. Perspective. The rest of the franchise is still there. You can watch that. Welcome to fandom. Ignore what you don't like. Keep what you do. Facetiousness aside here. This, again, usually involves a lot of older action stars. Now, let's give older action stars credit for still doing stuff in their 70s. But the problem is the fans, the core fans, want these older action stars to be able to do the exact same type of things that they did when they're in their 30s or 40s. And the franchise to be stuck in amber forever when the actors are no longer as young and handsome and literally cannot physically do these things. Let's give Harrison Ford some credit for going, please let franchise characters die with me. But at the same time, when they have tried to say replace him with an younger actor for the Han Solo movie, it didn't go well. It's just one of those, the older actors, these actors that you grew up with, that have been doing these action movies for a long time. There was the outcry when Lawrence Fishburne wasn't in the new Matrix movie, and he wasn't even asked because the writer had an idea of how she wanted that Morpheus' story to play out. It's they, in some ways, they just can't do the same things they did back when they were 30 and 40. And, we need these franchises to grow, expand, die, I don't know, so that other work, that represents the newer generations can either take their place to being reinterpreted for the new generation. So we got a new target audience. We've got a new, more eyes on, eyes on the screen and butts in the seats and subscriptions for the channels and stuff like that, so that, these ideas don't completely die. And so these themes, the themes for these shows with the older actors or the movies with the older actors, is it become the older heroes that need to retire and find their place in the world so younger people can have their shot. And once again, usually there's some younger actor who is taking a similar role, not the exact same role, but a similar role to what the action older action hero is doing, but they're taking a similar role to take on that mantle, to continue the franchise, or to, shift the franchise a little bit, create a spin-off, whatever. And it's almost like writers and directors, and in some cases even the studios themselves who are choosing to make these things, are trying to tell movie stars, and even the older fans, that, of these franchises, you have to let these actors retire. These franchisers have to move on so younger people can make names for themselves and have careers. And I know this is a crazy thought, but just sometimes you have to let go. And, that message might not resonate well with people. And they're making these story choices to get new eyes on the franchise so they can, keep it going and keep making money, which is their core thing. They're trying to please stockholders. They don't care about the core audience or the product, to the extent that, as long as it makes them money and keeps the stockholders happy. And this leads to complaints about there's too many reboots and too many remakes and too many extended franchises. Well, those are CEO decisions. Actors are being locked into these roles for movies for decades now. And, it's not like it's not like the television thing, it's not like it's a 15-season television run and you're being, you don't never know when they're going to drop it, but they're being locked into these big screen name roles, and they're like, Chris Evans, like, I want to go do other things. I want to go do Knives Out. I want to go play villains. I want to do this. I want to do that. Chris Hemsworth, he doesn't want to play Thor forever. So they want to be able to pass on, these kind of roles or the stories to other teams. And it makes, and they don't want AI facsimiles of them taking their place. Makes sense. They don't know if they'll get paid for it. Come on. And do you really want AI actors? No, if you're not going to pay somebody to act it, why would I want to watch it? So writers, and remember, writers are pitching 16 new ideas before they're like, oh, fine, why not a Powerpuff Girl reboot? And then they're like, well, CEOs are like, Powerpuffs made us money before, and it's easier to tell audience to come watch Powerpuff Girls and then to sell them on this new idea that you have, which may or may not be a great idea. And we can't predict the success of a new idea. And we can predict the success of a Powerpuff Girl reboot. Then maybe the CEO goes, they bring them a small passion project. Let's say American Sniper, because I know this one happened. And the CEO tells the director, well, in order for you to make American Sniper, this small passion project that would only cost us $35 million, you have to make us this big tentpole product that's going to cost $160 million that you don't give a shit about. And that tentpole project is usually some schlock that marketing projections think will do well and nobody has asked for it. That was Battleship. And who really asked for a Battleship movie? I don't know. I don't even remember why they were making a Battleship movie. It was something else had come up with the like that game themes, and they had Battleship lying around, so they were like, oh, let's try to make a Battleship movie. And the only good thing to that movie was near the end, and I feel so bad because I really like that actor. That the one where they're moving the the bomb from the back of the ship to the front of the ship, and they're using the old ship versus the new ships. That was like the only good thing. And I'm like, ugh, it drives me crazy because just give the guy the $35 million to make American Sniper. Then you don't have to worry about this $165 million movie that's not going to make any money anyways. Nobody wanted it, and you put it up against something that I can't. They put it up something really big name, and it just didn't go anywhere. And anybody who was anybody could have been like, that's not going to work. And so. And then when you extend franchises, and I know this is kind of a little all over the place, but okay, so then, they have these franchises. They're trying to build franchises. They're trying to build recognizable IP. And so, like MCU or Star Wars, maybe they wanted to make a lot of battleship movies. I have no idea. You run into the reality that different creators are going to want to explore different aspects of that greater universe and have different themes and different tones. This is going to attract different audience than the mainland franchise. The people who are going to watch The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett are probably not the same people who are going to watch Andor or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ahsoka or they were going to try to do an X-Wing one, which I'm kind of sad never got off the ground. And what was the next one? Oh, the other one that they were doing. This so many different projects. And and studios, okay? The studios see this as a good thing. But core fans don't necessarily like every piece of extended media that comes out and see it as a bad thing because they want everything to be, I don't know, perfect. And what's the slang? Banging. And life doesn't work like that. Especially in the television and film industry. For every blockbuster or highly praised show, you have dozens of things no one has ever heard about, or things that die mid-season, or things that are declared flops at the box office, even if it's not their fault. John Carter, for instance, was declared a flop at the box office, even though it really wasn't John Carter's fault, So when you start experimenting in a franchise, it's not always going to work. The old expanded Star Wars EU had dozens of books, and when I was like reading them out to be like, I unfortunately I can't carry these books with me 3,000 miles across, the United States again. I had to start reading out which books, like, I'd read this one again, this one has a good idea, this one is just weird, and this one didn't make sense. You're gonna have this ebb and flow of what is good and what is not, and what were good ideas. Was there a baby in this bathwater? Is there something we could salvage? Because you have lots of different people, lots of different experience coming in to try to give their point of view to a franchise, and that point of view is not always going to fit the core audience's expectations, and they might not like it. But just because they don't like it doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. As for reboots and remakes and so on, this has been Hollywood since silent films went to talkies, and talkies went to black and white went to color, and then we added talking to color. Just how many times, have things been adapted before you get a good adaptation? People in the industry are very open. It can take multiple times to get a good adaptation because, and especially books in particular, because you have to figure out what works and what doesn't, and if the technology is there. And like Dune has been adapted at least 3 times. My favorite is still the sci-fi mini series. I liked the lighting. I liked the costumes. They kept the dinner scene. It made sense to have Irulian come to the dinner scene. But there are people who don't like it because they don't like the painting, the background painting, or the lighting, or or the costumes and stuff like that. And I think that the new adaptation, the big screen one on the IMAX, I think that's going to capture the emotion a little better. Like, I think the Timothy Chalamet is going to capture the emotion of Paul better than perhaps even the sci-fi adaptation. You know, so people are going to come to different adaptations wanting different things. And let's take The Hobbit. The Hobbit has been like adapted to a cartoon, and and stuff. I had a BBC audiobook version, and people don't like what Peter Jackson did. And personally, I'm like, I don't really like the Mirkwood portion. I think that he kind of missed the point of the Mirkwood portion of the book, which is where, Bilbo really came into his own. But I can ignore that. I can ignore the whole dwarves and the thing in Turiel and everything. I can ignore that for the rest of it. That's fine. Sometimes it takes multiple times to get a good adaptation. All right, so yes, it's going to take twice. We're sitting here at 26 minutes. Next time. So, remember, bad writing can be subjective. But, I don't like it does not equal it's bad writing, especially when you have all these different people coming in and trying to give their points of view and into these adaptations or into extended franchises and stuff like that. They're trying to bring their life experience to the screen, and their life experience might not match your life experience, especially with the whole villains versus antagonists. Like, they're trying to tell their stories, and maybe you're not, resonating with their stories or something, but that's okay. There's a lot of people out there that are going to resonate with their stories. So, I think I kind of misunderstood Soul. I might need to go rewatch it, to get the difference between Passion versus Spark. I don't think so. If it was that misunderstood, maybe the writing could have been tweaked. I wouldn't call it necessarily bad. Just need some editing, So it's very, very subjective. Very hard to say that. But blaming the writers off the bat for something that you just don't like versus something that is objectively bad, it's awful for the writers. Let me tell you that. It feels awful for the writers. They're under a lot of pressure already, and they put out their work. So, alright, next time we will continue with more arguments I've seen of it's just bad writing and this is why type of thing in the video. Did not expect this to be a 5-part thing, but here we are. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.